Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of RIRE One-on-One with Zach Friedland. And today I am thrilled to be sitting down with my friend, my colleague from Ohio State University, Dr. Onsby Rose.
Hello.
You are joining us right now from your office in Sioux City, Iowa, where you are Director of Bands at Dordt University.
I am, yeah. Actually, Sioux Center is where I am, but which is a common mistake. We're actually about 45 minutes north of Sioux City, Iowa, but same region. All we got a lot of Sioux things out here, so they all easily get confused.
That's right, because you are right on the South Dakota border.
We are, yeah. I can
Yeah,
be in South Dakota in about 20 minutes from my
yeah,
house.
awesome. So I'm really excited to talk today. You have had an incredible career journey, an incredible
Oh,
life journey.
for sure.
And it all started with that you were in the United States Marine Corps for a while. So I just want to kind of start by telling us about, that first experience out of school and
Sure.
what it was like.
Absolutely. I'll try to be concise. I've had a unique trek to where I am now. If you would have asked me 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you thought that I would be a university director of bands, director of orchestras right now, I would have laughed hysterically in your face. But sometimes we don't know where God's going to lead our path. So here I am. Yeah, I graduated high school in 1993 and attended the University of South Carolina as a music ed major. My dream in this world was to be, the best high school band director out there, marching band, concert band, all that type of stuff. I had a great slate of teachers through my years that really led me to love music education. About 3.5 years into my degree, I kind of got tired and burned out on school. And I was doing okay, but just I needed a change of pace, and I thought, I don't want to not do music. So I decided to look into options in the military. I had looked a bit out of high school, and just I wanted to be the best of the best, and no disrespect to any of the services, they're all wonderful and do great things. But the Marine Corps was of a high attraction to me because it was just the typical thought that most people get when they think of a U.S. Marine, of the dress blues and Marines doing what Marines do. So I sought out the recruiters, and long story short, I joined under the Musicians Enlistment Option Program and planned to spend 4 years. And thought I'd do that, get out, use my GI Bill, and finish my degree up, and then go about my merry way as a band director. I did eventually follow that path, only it was a bit delayed. I actually spent right at 11 years in on active duty. And then finally, after about actually 10 years, 9 months, and 14 days to be exact, but who's counting? But after getting out of the Marine Corps, I worked outside of the music field for a while because I got out in an odd time of year. It was October of 2007. And the economy was actually right at the cusp of where it was getting ready to have the housing implosion. So there just wasn't a lot of jobs. It wasn't a great time of year to look for a job as a teacher. So I actually got a job still as a conductor, just a conductor of another type. I worked for the railroad for 5 years. Started out with Norfolk Southern in Norfolk, Virginia, and then eventually in northern Indiana. And at the end of my railroad time, spent a couple of years with Canadian Pacific, also out of Indiana. In 2012, I lost my job, and we moved to Tennessee for another, actually a railroad job at the time. And just a few months after we moved there, my wife passed, my first wife passed, and that kind of, out of necessity, projected me back into the classroom. There was a small rural high school band opening at Hampton High School in Carter County, Tennessee. My first band program had 9 students in it. And I was just happy to have a program. I was happy first to have a job that I could be home for my kids. And secondly, I was really excited to be back in what I'd always wanted to be doing, which was music. Taught there for a couple of years. Then I did my master's degree at Appalachian State. That led me to my doctoral degree at Ohio State. And during my master's degree, I just kind of the college teaching bug bit. And that led me to go on for my doctorate. And then happily, I arrived here this past summer in July at Dordt, what used to be Dordt College. Now, officially, this is our first year as Dordt University, and where I have 2 bands, a full chamber orchestra, a jazz band, and I'm getting ready to take over as the principal conductor of the Northwest Iowa Symphony Orchestra in the fall.
Awesome. want to go back to that very first step. What did beginning your career in the Marine Corps, how has that affected the rest of um, everything else you've done?
Sure. And that's exactly what it has. It has affected literally everything after after that time that I have done. It has informed not only musically, but also even more primarily is just I operate within the world. I like to think that I was a pretty on top of things type person prior to the Marine Corps, but the Marine Corps definitely taught me how to compartmentalize things and how to I mean, the typical thing that you hear from all military members, it taught me various levels of discipline, taught me organization. It definitely led me along in many of the leadership traits that I still hold tight to today. But really, it just gave me an overall appreciation of how to take care of people. And that's what we do as music educators, is we take care of students and hopefully guide them on their path in music. And there's so many things that that it led to, specifically me thinking about others before self. Marines are all very good at that. You're always looking out for the guy and gal to your left and right. So yeah, it really has informed everything that I've done. There's so many lessons during my 11 years in the Marine Corps that I hold tight to today when I go to make decisions about how to run my program here, about decisions about educating my students. I definitely would not be the same leader, musician, or teacher that I am today had it not been for that time.
Yeah. Um, Obviously, your faith plays an incredible role in both your writing, which we'll get to, and just, works into your teaching. How has that all intertwined, and how has your personal life experience really enhanced your career
Sure.
and your music?
I've gone through some challenging times in life. There's been a couple of occurrences in my life that, had I allowed it to, could have probably led me down a path of destruction where I would have either, just not found myself in the same place that I am now. The first one was when I did get out of the Marine Corps. There was a struggle for a couple of years of the adjustment back into civilian life, of working in a job field that was not really my first choice. But really, the major life-altering occurrence that I've had that could have really directed my life in a different way was when my first wife passed. She actually committed suicide, and my faith played tremendously into that. I've grown up and been a strong Christian for many years, but it was at that point in my life that I really had nothing other to rely on other than my faith, and I did turn very deeply to God. And kind of my testimony is that I firmly believe that He carried me through that and allowed me to continue to progress and get better at what I do and keep my life on the right track. I could have very easily have gone down some very bad pathways had I not just kind of put my trust in God and allowed Him to lead me in the way that I needed to go. So yeah, it's interesting how it's all worked out, because I never purposely was looking to teach at a Christian university. It's something I was entirely open to, but I, like most of us finishing up degrees, we just want to get a gig. But God put me in some very unique circumstances where I actually interviewed at a couple of different Christian universities. The first one was Grove City College in Pennsylvania, which is an amazing school. And that wasn't where I was supposed to be, apparently, but I ended up interviewing here at Dort, and he led me here to where I'm teaching. We're associated with the Christian Reformed faith, and it's been just a wonderful way to take my faith beliefs and intertwine those with my teaching beliefs. It's really unique that it's worked out that way. I would have never pictured that for myself in the long run, but I'm very happy that it did, and I think whether I stay here 3 years or whether I stay here 30 years, it will definitely have some great things that I'll be able to learn from and continue to grow as a teacher.
Awesome. And so after you went back into high school, and then eventually you did your master's at
Mhm.
Appalachian State in North
That's
Carolina,
correct.
and
Yep.
then did your doctorate at The Ohio State University, where
Ohio State, that's right.
you and I met. What are some of your highlights from those years?
Oh gosh, there's
Both
so many
those
great
schools.
things at OSU. I mean, I guess the highlight is my teacher, Russ Mickelson, the director of bands there. You know him well
I do.
as well. He's really, you know, most of us wherever we study for our graduate degrees, it's our mentor that really makes that experience. And Russ has absolutely done that. He was very loving but firm with me. I know that I probably frustrated the daylights out of him from time to time, but I learned such tremendous things from him. He's, you know, Russ is a strong Christian man himself, so we had that in common. And he just was willing to allow me to learn. My time spent, I guess if I had to choose one highlight of my whole time there, if it was a musical highlight, it would be my final performance there of Maslanka 10 with the Wind Symphony. It was a great opportunity, a great experience, and stressful at times. We actually got a couple of rehearsals snowed out during that preparation period, but the band just rose to the occasion regardless. I think we only had 7 rehearsals total on a 42-minute symphony, and they just played their rear ends off.
And on that subject, for your dissertation, you commissioned Maslanka's 10th Symphony, which was, of course, written by both David and Matthew.
Yes.
Um, what was that experience like, and more so, how has your relationship with David affected you?
Oh, it was great. You know, David and I started talking in my master's degree. My mentor during my master's at App State, his name's Dr. John Ross. He was instrumental in encouraging me to reach out to David. I heard David's 4th Symphony and was just, as most of us are hearing that piece, I was just floored at the incredible depth and what an amazing piece of music that is. And of course, David was a rock star, or it really is still a rock star in my mind. And I thought, who am I? Who, you know, some unknown master's student to reach out to David Maslanka. And John continued to press me and said, no, no, no. He knew David, and he knew that David would be receptive to that. So I did finally reach out to him via email, which led to us becoming good friends over the next few years. We met at Midwest numerous times. And when I was finishing my master's up, I mentioned to David, I said, you know, I want to commission a symphony. He had written 9 at that time. And he said, well, when you get somewhere, he said, you got to have a band to play it. I said, yeah, I understand. And I didn't know where I was going to school for my DMA at the time. He said, well, whenever you land somewhere, when you get a band, then, you know, let's continue to talk. So when I got to OSU, you know, I have to give all the credit to Russ for this, because there's very few people out there, director of bands, you know, in his position, a major, probably one of the top 5 university bands in the nation, that this crazy doctoral student comes to them and says, I want to commission a symphony, and in addition, I'd like to do it with your band. You know, that's asking a whole lot, a whole lot. But in typical Russ Mickelson fashion, he was like, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. He said, if you think you can build a consortium and raise the money to do it, then go for it. So I did, and it worked out. Originally, it was supposed to be Symphony number 11, and unfortunately, David passed during the writing of 10. Scott Hagen and the Utah Wind Symphony had commissioned 10, and David started writing that, and then both he and Allison's health failed during that, and he unfortunately never got to start on 11. Because of that, we had both built consortiums to support the commissioning of those 2 pieces. So we combined them together, and we worked together in order to make this mega consortium of like 80 schools. And then Scott did the premiere with, actually ended up being the University of Utah Wind Ensemble that did the premiere. And I think a couple other people played it before I had the opportunity to do it at OSU. But it was still a great experience working with David over the time of commissioning. I've got so many emails from him that I look back at now and really just you know, it's sad in one way because we've lost him, but it makes me very happy in another way that I was able to develop the relationship that I did with him. He's the sole reason that I began composing. I never thought of myself as a composer until I began to study with him. He wanted me to learn from the inside out his compositional method, and I agreed to try that in order to, you know, study that while I was writing my dissertation, and that led me to beginning to write my own music, which has been incredible. I now have 10 or 11 pieces published. So and when you listen to my music, it's you can't separate it from David. It's definitely very obvious at the influence. So, and you know, I developed not only a great relationship with David, but one of my closest friends now is Matthew Maslenka. We worked together on that project and throughout the years. In fact, I just got off the phone with him last night, talking about some various things with his website and things like that. Matthew's an incredible person as well.
Awesome. So speaking of composing, you really have it's the phenomenal story about how it all happened for you. A little piece called Heroes of the Sea.
Right.
And so just to start, just tell us how that kind of came to fruition.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to be as concise as possible. I was working on my dissertation with David, writing on Symphony 10/11, and looking at his compositional method, and he was working with me on meditation. If anyone that's familiar with David's music knows that his method relied heavily on meditation, on opening up your subconscious mind to the universe. So we had gone through and worked these things, and we had talked, and I was learning about this. And one night I got an email from Jerry Junkin at the Dallas Wind Symphony for their normal yearly fanfare submissions. And I laid down that night, and I can remember thinking, you know what? Let's take this out for a whirl. Kind of like, okay, I've learned how to drive the car now. Let's see what I can do with it. Or I thought I had learned how. I still got so much to learn. But so anyway, I got up that evening and I started to write. I wrote a brass and percussion fanfare, which was initially entitled Die Helden, which stands for Our Heroes, and sent it off to the Dallas Winds, thinking, okay, I'll never hear anything about it. You know, good try. And about 2 weeks later, I got an email back that said that I was one of the winners, one of the folks that got selected. So that was great. And then I let some band director friends of mine, some musician friends, listen to it, and they said, "Wow, you should add woodwinds to that and make it into a full wind ensemble piece." So I thought, okay, I sat down at the table at my computer one evening and did just that. And then on a whim, my personality lends itself well to this because I'm very outgoing. I sent it to a person whom now I consider a dear friend, Jason Fettig, the colonel at the U.S. Marine Band, and thought, I'm just going to send this to Jason and see what he thinks of it. Sent it to him, again expecting maybe not to hear anything back, or at best to get an email back that said, "Hey, Onsby, great try, keep working on it." Again, about a week or so later, I get an email, I'll never forget it, standing in my kitchen, checking my phone, my email on my phone, and it was an email from Jason that said, "Onsby, this is great. If you would consider it, I'd like to program this for our August 30th concert at the U.S. Capitol." Well, I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't even speak. I was that just beside myself. I kind of had to hand my phone to my wife because she was like, "What's going on?" And of course she read it and found out. And of course, I mean, the U.S. Marine Band, the president's own, playing something, it definitely helps a composition career.
Yeah.
So of course they did a phenomenal job with that, and then that was what was Heroes from the Sea, when I added the woodwinds and expanded the percussion. And then I started talking to Larry Lang at the Air Force Band and a few other directors that thought you should take this and turn it into a larger work. Frank Kelly actually was the one who said, this would make a good suite. So I thought, great, the Heroes from the Sea for the Forces from the Sea, and then I would do a movement for the Air Force and a movement for the ground forces. It ended up evolving into a 4-movement symphony. So this 2-minute and 22-second fanfare eventually became a 24-minute symphony. The last movement I finally added, I felt like it was incomplete without this movement. It's called For the Fallen, and it's basically for those fallen, as well as I dedicated it to David as well, because he had such deep meaning in helping me learn and get started in composing, and ended up that 4th movement has become the most popular movement of the symphony. And of course, since then I've written a number of other works, mainly 1-movement things, but continue to luckily have people that are interested in commissioning my music.
Yeah, the piece that RIRE was lucky enough to do, Chant Song Celebration, was commissioned by Eastern Arizona College, Jeff Despain, and that's another piece that has a unique story behind it.
Yeah, Jeff had commissioned me originally just to write a piece. He just said, "I want to commission you to write something." Great, what composer doesn't like to be asked that? Just write something, And I said, great, I'll do it. And we had discussed a little bit. And then just a couple weeks after we had decided to do this, he unfortunately had one of his students was killed in a terrible car accident. So he reached out to me and said, would you be willing to dedicate the piece, write this piece for her? And I said, absolutely. Her name was Brianna Varnum. So that's how Chant Songs in Celebration came about, was as a memorial piece to her, but it's more of a kind of a story. The piece goes through the story of her and her leaving our earthly world and going into the spiritual, the heavenly world. The program notes explain it pretty thoroughly, but I use some hymn tunes and different things in there that orally show that. And it's ended up being a very popular piece. It's gotten a number of performances.
Yeah. When you compose, I know when we worked on my dissertation together and I interviewed you, you talked about when you compose, you see a movie in your head, which is something that you and I both share. That kind of that imagery of, yeah, that kind of helps. For me, it's an imagery that helps guide the music and really kind of guide the melody. And I just curious if you want to elaborate more on what that means for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not uncommon today in our generation for that to be the case with musicians, because we've all grown up with Star Wars and John Williams and all of the the big classic movie scores. That it's it just makes sense to me. It's very comfortable for me to have a movie in my head, and then I write the music to that. Sometimes I write the music and the movie comes as I'm writing, but there has to be some sort of imagery for that music to come about. I've tried to write some without a storyline, if you will, and it doesn't work very well for me. It just doesn't, the music doesn't flow like you need it to as a composer. So generally what I'll do is I spend a tremendous amount of time in prayer. Whenever, and I'll just use the Chant Songs of Celebration as an example. When Jeff asked me to write that piece and we decided on it being for Brianna, I never met Brianna. I never knew her, nor did I know any of her family until after the piece was written. I met her mom, but I just spent a lot of time in prayer, and I specifically asked God to give me whatever music would come from that could not only comfort her family and friends, but offer some sort of a memorial in her remembrance. And that's exactly what I feel that he did. He gave me this picture of her and her life, and it's kind of esoteric, but just the way that things would have progressed through up through her death. It's very sad at the beginning, and then at the end it's very celebratory. But I had that movie picture in my head in order to do that, and everyone has their different beliefs on how this works. But in my firm belief is that I'm just a lucky guy that gets to put the notes on the page, that they come from, the big man upstairs, and he just gives me the honor of being able to write them. So when I do write, I do spend a tremendous amount of time asking, dear Lord, whatever it is that you would have me write, just give me the right notes for that. And so far, that's worked pretty well for me.
And you have a new piece out right now that is about a grade 3.
Yeah, it's about a grade 3.
Nighttime Lullaby.
Comfortably in the grade 3 range. You got to have a pretty good alto sax player, because it's got a pretty extensive alto solo. Also commissioned by Jeff just recently, called Nighttime Lullaby. It actually hasn't been premiered yet because of the coronavirus. Has put us all at home for a while, but I think he'll do it in the fall. It's basically it's kind of the piece that we originally were going to write whenever he commissioned me the first time, and it ended up writing Chant. He just said, maybe something about my family. So Jeff has a large family, 7 kids, much like me. I have 5 kids, and he sent me some pictures of his family, and I spent again some time in prayer over it and trying to figure out what would be good in order to to give him the feeling of love towards his family. And it ended up, the cover, the guy that does the covers for me through Murphy Music Press just did a phenomenal job. I sent him the program notes, and the cover has this baby mobile on it, and that's exactly what I was thinking. The movie in my head was Jeff and his wife looking down into the cribs of their children as they were born, and then watching them as they grew up, and that's kind of where Nighttime Lullaby came from. But yeah, it's very accessible to almost any ensemble. Comfortably in the grade 3 range. Most high school bands, some middle school bands could probably easily play it.
So your Symphony No. 1 was very successful, of course. Commissioned by about 80 schools, something around that.
Give or take 77 to 80. I forgot what the final count was.
Yeah. And word on the street is you are beginning to work on Symphony No. 2.
I am. I don't have anything official. Well, I should take that back. I do have about 45 measures of the first movement kind of roughed out right now in Sibelius. I've been pondering it for a long time, and I've gone through a couple of ideas. My wife originally had talked to me about writing a symphony based on love, which I'm still very interested in doing. I just don't think that that's kind of what God has planned at this point for me. But I wanted to think more. Right after I finished Symphony 1, I felt that I was kind of being led in the direction of to write something about the book of Revelations in the Bible. Of course, we all know it as essentially the Armageddon, the end of the world. It's the prophecy of the end of the world, and it's very the depth of imagery in it is quite incredible, because there's obviously lots of things that don't mean exactly what they are, that they represent other things, and I think it lends itself very good to musical interpretation, to putting music with it. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how that I would plan it out. I'm not sure it's going to be a 4-movement symphony. I'll probably call it a symphony of some sort, but it probably won't be the traditional. David wrote a work called A Child's Garden of Dreams that's ended up being 5 movements, and it may be along those same lines in that it has 5 to 7 shorter movements, just because it can illustrate, well, 7 being a very biblical number obviously anyway, and representative of various things that are going on. But essentially it'll be based on the book of Revelations, and it'll be somewhat about end times, which is, it's funny that I'm kind of getting a chance to work on it now. Not that I think we're in the end of times, but we're definitely in a very uncomfortable part of our world history. But I thought about it a long time ago, and now, with all the coronavirus things and stuff like that going on, it definitely offers itself some more inspiration, I guess, from current events.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing that I've always been curious about, I cannot believe I've never asked you before, what does left-hand door music allude to?
That funny story. So John Mackey and I were speaking one time, and I asked him where he got the name for his company, Onsby Music.
Yeah.
And it's on his website. He basically, when he was in composition school, he was known for writing lots of ostinatos. So that's kind of how that came about. So whenever Heroes from the Sea took off, I had to figure out real quickly how to market and create my own company, if you will. So I tried to figure out, what do I name it? And I thought, what am I going to call this? Well, I'm left-handed, and I thought, okay, let's come up with something that's odd and catchy and that you wouldn't, normally think of. There's no such thing as a left-hand door.
Yeah.
So I thought, left-hand door music. And I know it's kind of a kooky, nerdy way, but that's exactly where it came from. And my wife was like, what is that? And I explained it to her. She's like, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. So, but yeah.
Sticks in your head, though.
Yeah, it sticks in your head, and it's like, okay, it's definitely unique.
Yeah.
Onsby Rose music just didn't do it for me, and I went through a couple other ideas, but that just kind of popped in, and it kind of felt like it had a rhythm to it, so I stuck with it.
There you go. So you are currently, like I said, director of bands at Dordt University in Iowa. Obviously, your first year has been a little weird, but what have some of the highlights been so far? And I know you have an awesome project coming up in hopefully next spring. CD that I'd love for you to tell us about.
Yeah, there's been some great times this year. My students have been amazing. I really, truly could not have asked for a better place to teach. I've got not only wonderful students, but I've got just incredible faculty, and our administration here is just, and I don't say that to be politically correct. I say that because I truly mean it. It's a true joy to work here. There's been a number of things that have happened over this year that have been very exciting. The biggest of them is our CD project. We were supposed to record our first album that our wind symphony has ever made this coming spring. We would have started recording in about 2 weeks, but since we're not here, obviously that has to be postponed. It's called Music Among Friends, and we will do this next year. I'm not sure if the repertoire will all be the same, but the composers will be the same. I'm challenged in the fact that I've got to prepare the music with the ensemble. In addition, it's got to be part of our concerts and stuff. So obviously, I can't spend another semester playing the same literature again. So we'll have to adjust some of it. Luckily, the second concert was all to go on the CD, and we didn't play any of that. So I'll probably use all of that literature, and then the stuff that we've already performed, I'll choose something else of the composers to record. But it's basically based on the idea that, you know, music making and art is a very human, connected activity. And we all develop very unique and fruitful friendships and meaningful relationships throughout our trek of being a musician. So when choosing the music, I chose music that is by composers that are all important to me in my life. They're either close friends, close colleagues, and by association, the ensemble also can call those composers friends. A couple of actually composers that are connected to Dort in addition to me. One of the composers, Jonathan Postuma, is a Dort undergrad alumni and went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison for composition. And then, of course, yourself, David Maslanka, and a number of other composers that will be on the CD. So we do still intend to do that. I think we'll be recording it next. It looks like probably late March next year. We're actually going to go on tour in early March, and I'm going to work up all of the literature for the CD for our tour. And then as soon as we get back from tour, we'll spend 3 or 4 days here recording it all for the CD. So great times. That's just one of the many exciting things that I've gotten to do while I'm here. You know, great concerts, great kids, just a great time altogether.
Speaking of other projects you have going on right now, you and Michael Scott Butler at University of Wisconsin Stephen Point have put together an awesome project that would love for you to tell us about.
Yeah, it's you know, it's based. I can't take credit for it. Mike was the one who had this idea, and I just kind of jumped in and said, "Hey, I'm happy to help. You know, facilitate setting up things." He sent me a text one morning, said, "Hey, what do you think about you know, all of us that are currently working? You know, even though I'm a composer, I'm lucky enough that I have an academic position that I'm still getting paid." He said, "What do you think about, you know, trying to see if people want to take part of their stimulus check and offer that towards like a crowdfunding account that we could use to help out a composer that has lost, you know, tremendous amount of income, or multiple composers. You know, in return, we asked the composer to write a piece, and everyone that donates to the crowdfunding campaign gets, you know, a PDF copy of that piece and can perform it with their band." I said, "I think that's a great idea," because I'll just use Nicole Puino as a good example. You know, she's a good friend of mine that she relies solely on freelance income, whether that be residencies at universities, commissions, or teaching privately. And she basically lost all of her income whenever the country shut down. So I thought, great, let's make this an opportunity. And we did. We set up a website where composers could go to and submit their information. And then we've got a GoFundMe site that you can find via my Facebook page. It's out there, hopefully all over the place. In fact, I'll share it later on today, so it can easily be found on my page. And people can elect to donate whatever amount they want. There's no specific amount. We know that everyone has very unique financial positions. Even myself, I'm in the middle of buying a house, but I'm still going to commit some money towards it. And we're hoping that, you know, we'll come out with at least a few $1,000s that we can offer to a composer, or 2 or 3, or ever how many that we can feasibly do, to help them out monetarily, get through the challenges, as well as we get this, you know, new music, which the band world loves. That's one of the many things I love about the wind band world, is that we all just crave new music. So we get this new art for us all to play.
Awesome. When you are away from the podium and away from the staff paper and the pen, I know you are quite the traveler with your family. You have who is Winnie the Winnebago?
Oh yeah, that's our new kid, Winnie the Winnebago. That's our when my wife and I my current wife and I got married in let's see, it would have been 2015. Yeah, 2015 we got married, and one of the things that we promised ourselves when we got married is that we would not just talk about all the things that we wanted to do, we would actually do them. Lots of people get in that rut of saying, oh, we'd love to do this, we'd love to do this, and then you just never make it come true. So one of the things we wanted to do was travel. At the time, we had a pop-up camper, and we've spent, gosh, months in combined time in that camper. When we moved to Iowa, we knew that we would be camping for a while, and we thought, okay, this is the time. It's time to upgrade our pop-up to a Class C. So we got a nice 20, I think it's 28, 29-foot Class C Winnebago. It's perfect for us and the boys. It's got all, we've got a nice queen-size bed in the back. My days of roughing it in the woods like I did in the Marine Corps are over. I like to get out and go hike and then come back and have a nice hot shower. So yeah, Winnie has joined us. We've had her a couple of years now, and we've used it extensively already. And planning again, depending on how things go with this summer, with things opening back up, we're planning on going out to the Smoky Mountain National Park in Shenandoah in Virginia for a couple of weeks to visit family as well as to do some camping. But yeah, that's my primary outside of music activity is camping and hiking. My oldest son that's at home, Timothy, my 14-year-old, and I are actually going to, again, if this doesn't get canceled because of the virus, we're going to the boundary waters of Minnesota for a week to do some canoeing. And the biggest excitement for him is that he knows Dad's cell phone won't work for a whole week, so he gets me all to himself, which will be a blast. I'm sure we're gonna have a great time.
Yeah. And you also just got a new barbecue smoker. Another one here.
Yeah,
it's fun to talk about people's hobbies because sometimes we do music so much and the job can just consume you. But
yep. I love to cook. You can tell by looking at me that I love to eat. So yeah, that's just one of the things when we were out earlier this year. It's like, I'd really like to get a smoker, and I've used it, gosh, at least probably twice a week, if not more, since we've gotten it. In fact, I just did a bacon wrapped pork tenderloin last night, and it was incredible. So yeah, I love to cook on the side. My wife is an avid quilter and sewer. She's actually been making masks out the wazoo for the last couple of weeks.
That's awesome.
In fact, I just spoke to Russ Mickelson earlier today, and he had gotten some in the mail that we had sent him. And so, she tries to use her talents to help people out, and she's very good at that.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down. It's always great to have a conversation with you, whether it be in person or 1,000 miles away. We will have to do it in person as soon as this is all over. Before we go, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me easiest on Facebook, just Onsby Rose. I'm the only Onsby Rose on there. It's a picture of my profile picture is my wife and I. I encourage people to friend me. I love to keep up with people, and I'm a social media. Actually, I should say I'm a Facebook addict. I don't do any other social media because I only have time for one platform. So Facebook is it. You can also find me on the Dordt University website. I do have a website of my own, onsbyrose.com, but it's actually in the midst of being revamped right now. I'm trying to update, so it's down. And actually, funny story, I found out that because I have the link down right now, apparently if you go to onsbyrose.com, it leads you to some weird Korean site or something. But I should have that back up in the next month or two, and that has links to recordings of all of my music and just kind of an update of what's going on in my life. And then of course if people are interested in purchasing and performing my music, it's everything that I have written now is managed through Murphy Music Press. Sean Murphy does a phenomenal job of marketing and getting music out there, so I encourage people, if you just Google Murphy Music Press, it'll take you right to the site, and it has both score examples and audio examples all there of not only my music, but music of a number of other composers.
Awesome. For more information on what we do, go to www.rirecording.org, and for myself, you can go to www.zjfmusic.com. Once again, thank you to Onsby. Thank you for listening. Until next time, please stay safe, stay healthy, stay home.
Thanks for having me, Zach.